Welcome back. This is going to be part two of, chronic illnesses. I biffed that. That's okay. Part two, chronic illnesses. We left off talking about saving your health records.
Yes. So if you have a child with a chronic illness, make sure you get copies of their health records, save them, put them somewhere safe. You may never need them, but we did. Okay. One thing that people don't understand because everybody's health records are linked up now, they only keep health records for a certain amount of time. And once you go from a pediatric patient to an adult patient, you will never find those records again after a certain amount of time. We didn't know that. So my daughter's 31 now, and there was like a whole bunch of stuff. They tried to do testing, cost her a lot of money. It was a lot of rigmarole with the insurance and stuff like that because they couldn't get her childhood records. So I ended up going to a doctor's appointment with her. And luckily, I remember all the medication that she had been on, all the dosages. I know that sounds weird, but it was pretty traumatic. So I remember all of that, the genesis of it, all of that. I was able to, so there's a medication that is about $60,000 a month, which nobody can, well, I mean, maybe somebody can afford it, but surely not her. And she would have been eligible to get it for free from the drug company under certain criteria. But the testing they were doing didn't prove that definitively. So she was going to have to do some other very expensive testing, which would, one, delay the medication that she needs. And it would cost a lot of money for the testing. Okay, so I went with her to her doctor's appointment because she was 5 when she got sick, and I told the doctor everything that I could remember, and luckily he was able to take that information and go to this drug company, and they put her in the thing to get the medication for free. So she's getting the medication now, and she was able to forego the expensive testing that she would have had to do. We were lucky. Had I saved those health records, I could have just handed them all and it would have avoided all of that. Or she could have handed them to them and she wouldn't have had to be like, Mom, please come to the appointment with me. Not that I minded.
Well, and I think not just your kids' health records, save your
Um,
own, because we were talking about that just earlier today on the phone. I went to that fertility clinic in 2020 and they ran some of the same tests that my current provider has run for me. And I was telling her that, and she's like, "Oh, can we get those records?" Well, I've tried to contact them a couple of times now. I can't access my records through their patient portal. And when I called them and was like, "Hey, I was seen there back in 2020, granted, this is being filmed in 2025. The statute for keeping health records is supposed to be 7 years from the date of last treatment. So I was treated there 5 years ago, and when I called and said, "Hey, I was treated there, I want to get my records," they said, "We have no record of you ever being a patient." So sometimes weird things happen, like they changed a system or God
that
only
happens a
knows
lot.
what.
That happens a lot.
Um, Records get lost, so keep those yourself. I wish I had known that then. I would have kept the records, but I honestly didn't think it would become relevant. So even for your own health, if you've got something going on and you're getting testing done, keep those records for yourself, because I think if for some reason it ever comes back up again, you want to be able to access it.
Well, and also with a chronic illness, so I went to a lot of different doctors and they were not great, but there was testing done and stuff like that. Well, when I finally went to a decent doctor, I would have had the pattern because the thing is, we don't all stay with the same doctor. Like, it's not like it used to be, you know what I mean? Where you had the one doctor and they knew the whole family and all of that. It's not like that anymore. And, or they have a whole lot of patients, so they don't remember. And sometimes, especially with chronic illnesses, it's going to be a culmination of like a history, which these doctors might miss the history because they don't know the history. So it's good to have those records. Even if you think it's a one-off thing, what if it ends up not being? Or what if it ends up being? At least you have the record.
Well, and if you are going in because you think you have a chronic illness, and you want to be seen, keep a journal of symptoms too, because that's something I've really sucked at. I've tried it a few times here and there on and off and never really stuck with it. Um, but I know in the first appointment I had with my current provider, she had asked certain questions, and it didn't even occur to me to like mention those things as symptoms, even though she asked me about headaches. And I told her, no, no history of headaches. I have a whole history of migraines. Like I've literally gone to doctors over migraine. I had an MRI for the migraines that I get, and I didn't even think about it in the moment. I totally biffed it. Granted, hypothyroidism, one of the symptoms is brain fog, so I'm blaming the thyroid. But
And let somebody know where you kept that journal, because I did keep an extensive journal, but I ended up with dementia and couldn't remember where I put it.
yeah, so I
That's a
didn't even
pretty extreme case, but you never know. It could happen to you.
I didn't even think about it when she asked the question about headaches. And then like 3 days later, I had a horrifying migraine and I was looking through like the appointment notes on my phone. And I was like, oh, she put no history of headaches. I absolutely have a history of headaches. So definitely like keep a symptom journal, have a buddy who knows where you put it because you might get dementia. And
I mean, that's an extreme case, but I mean, I didn't think it would happen.
no, but important thing to note about dementia is a symptom, it is not a diagnosis. So you can have dementia that's not permanent. So a lot of issues like illnesses can cause bouts of dementia.
Okay, let me clarify that more, because I actually had a fight with somebody on social media about this, which social media, it can be great and it can be really stupid too. And I don't even know why I got in the weeds with it, but I did, because I had dementia. And I said that it's not a disease, it's a symptom. Okay, if you look up dementia, it doesn't say it's a symptom. What it actually is, the definition of dementia, and I cannot remember word for word because I again had a smush brain for a really long time. So bear with me, but is it describes a series of symptoms describing cognitive decline that can be caused by many different things. So it is a series of symptoms basically that describes cognitive decline. So you might forget things, have short-term memory, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows somebody with dementia. It can be caused by an acute illness. It can be caused actually by a fever that's too high. It can be caused by UTIs, particularly in older folks. And if you've ever worked in a nursing home, which we both have,
Hmm.
as soon as somebody starts acting goofy, they're like, "Did you put a hat on the toilet?" I bet you Ethel's got a UTI, and 9 times out of 10, she does.
I don't know how many times we had this one doctor and he had to like admit that I was right and he was wrong because I don't know how many times I called it. I was like, you know, Granny's got a UTI. I mean, obviously using Granny because HIPAA, but
Well,
so
and
and so's got a
Ethel
UTI.
wasn't, just so you know, Ethel wasn't a real patient. I just picked an old lady name.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you hear us using names for the old people, they are not real patient
They're
names. No HIPAA
fictional names.
violations here. Um, but yeah, because I finally talked with the doctor. I'm like, look, I'm not a doctor. I am a lowly CNA. I am literally the butt wiper of the medical world. But like I told him, I was like, I work 12-hour shifts 5 days a week. I am with these people 60 hours a week, every week, sometimes more. I know they're normal. So if I'm telling you, hey, something's out of the normal, I think it's a UTI, you should listen. So another thing, other medical professionals other than doctors might be more apt to listen to you and your concerns. So they're good people to advocate for you too.
And a lot of hospitals have CNAs too, and they will advocate. And Lauren was a CNA and did that as a full-time job. I was actually a department head at a nursing home. I was a registered CNA because I often had to take care of the people. I was alone with them, taking them to medical appointments and stuff. So I needed to be qualified to do that. I did work a few CNA shifts, but I could kind of pick and choose because I was a boss lady. But anyway, so if you're a CNA and you're watching this, so much love to you, because that is such an important job. I have done it. I could not physically do it. There's no way I could physically do that day in and day out. Like it is a tough job. And those ladies, especially the ones who are really good, are
And
in
men.
MN. I'm sorry, I always say ladies because I work with mostly ladies, but we did have some male CNAs too.
I worked with mostly ladies too, but I had this like friend of mine. He was an incredible CNA. He was so great to have. Like I loved when I got in. And I'm like, "Ooh, Nathan's working. Like we're gonna have a great shift." So,
Yeah, so know that we appreciate you and we see you. And if you have a loved one in a care facility, please thank those CNAs because they work really hard. And you do hear about some bad CNAs, and I've actually seen some bad CNAs. And those people, I don't even know why they do that for a profession. But most of them, they're not in it for the money. They really care and they work really hard and at the detriment of their own families sometimes because you can't. So, say somebody doesn't show up, they can't leave their shift because they
hmm
can't leave these people not taken care of. And that's how dedicated they are. So, if you're a doctor or a nurse listening to this, I know there's a hierarchy in the medical community. Please appreciate your CNAs because they are really in the trenches and they're there to help you recognize things that you might have not seen.
And I know that was a bit of a tangent there away from our chronic illness thing, but uh, you need sometimes, if you're somebody who has trouble advocating for yourself, you need somebody who's able to advocate for you. If you have a friend who's a CNA and you trust them and you think they're willing to advocate in your best interest, like trust me, CNAs are used to being shit on by doctors, and we are cool with helping our friends advocate if they need just a supporting voice or even just somebody to stand in the corner and look disappointed at them and tell them to do better.
And that
So
doesn't, so I know we're talking chronic illnesses, but I think we covered most of what you can do with chronic illnesses, or we've at least touched on it. You can always go on our Facebook page or in our email. We do read them. If you have anything that you would like us to talk about or answer or questions for us that you might have, we will answer those. Um, but I was going to talk about something else and then, if you have a child, well, it kind of goes with chronic illnesses. So if you have a child who has an IEP or who you think might need an IEP, and for people who don't know what that means, I really don't know what IEP stands for. Um,
I don't either.
I'm not sure what it stands for, but what it means basically is that your child has something that they need accommodated for their learning because they might have a learning disability, they might be autistic, or yeah, I don't like to say somebody's autistic, like they have autism. They are jock or whatever their name is. They happen to have autism. Um, I guess that's just a nicer way of saying it, but you know,
I I've heard it both ways, and I mean I have a lot of friends with children who are, diagnosed autistic on vastly different ends of the spectrum, and I've heard different things like my son is autistic or my son has autism, and I think it kind of depends. I know some people prefer to say so and so is autistic because like their idea is like autism's not a bad word, and saying they have autism rather than just are autistic, makes it sound more like a disease than just a
oh, that's interesting.
different brain chemistry. So I've heard the argument both ways. I've heard people say like have autism as, putting the child before the diagnosis. They're a human with a diagnosis, but I've also heard people say, you know, I prefer to say they're autistic because there's nothing wrong with them. They're just different.
Right,
So
the brain.
I've heard the argument both ways.
Okay, so I think however you say it, don't say it with malintent
Yes, absolutely.
because they're
Um,
just people.
but you were talking about IEPs and we got off on an autistic
So
tangent.
IEPs, I don't know if you've ever been to an IEP meeting or if you thought your child needed an IEP and then they'll do an evaluation. So you go in there and here you are, this mom who is requesting an IEP, or you're a mom who's going to an IEP meeting because they meet every so often to talk about needs, blah, 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 blah. And you're in there with this administrator, and it could be like all these people from the school, and it's very intimidating. And they're not always nice, and they will steamroll you.
hmm
So if you are a person who needs to do that, bring someone with you. If they don't do anything but sit there in a support role, it gives you the it just makes you not feel alone, because I had a friend when the kids were little, and two of her children had an IEP, and one of her children, it was a pretty major situation. He had ADHD in a pretty epic fashion, and I was the emergency person. So if she was at work, she was a single mom. So if she was at work and some shenanigans happened at school, I was the one who had to go get him. And I mean, like, he beat the snot out of a teacher, so obviously I had to go get him. And he was a big boy, like he was big by middle school, with no impulse control. And so she knew that the staff didn't really like her, and they were very judgmental of her. They really didn't like her child. Um, and it was evident. And she went to a lot of these IEP meetings by herself. And she was so just stressed out about what she was like, can you go with me? And I said, sure. And I didn't say much, but I knew the child. I used to watch him. And you know what? He wasn't a dangerous child or anything. He had to be handled a certain way. There were certain things when he lost control that could bring him back to himself. Um, and she tried to tell them that, but they really didn't listen to her. And I get it, because she was very frustrated with the whole thing. She loved her son, but at the same time was not real happy with his behavior and all of those things. And I am capable of walking into a setting like that and being very authoritative. And I'm going to tell you something, as somebody who's studied a lot of sociology. If you say things with authority, 90% of the time people will listen to you. So her saying, well, if you do this, it will bring my son back to themselves. But she was very timid. I went in there and I said, oh, really? Yes, he does lose control. But if you do this, this will redirect that behavior. And they listened.
Um, and just a quick shout out to the moms group, Moms Managing Madness. If you think your kid needs an IEP, but you aren't sure where to start, or how to get that ball rolling, that is a really awesome group to ask that question in, because they actually have a lot of, I don't know if the moderators themselves, so it's a part of a network of groups on Facebook, the Moms Managing Network. But within the moderators for that network, there are a lot of teachers or people who have a background in education or who have kids who needed IEPs, who can kind of give you some starting points on where to go to get the ball rolling to get your kid the help they need. So shout out to
Also,
them.
yeah, so those groups are amazing. And the ladies in the moms managing groups, all of them are pretty great. So, and if they don't know something, there a lot of them are so willing to do research
Yeah.
and give you the resources. So a lot of times people go in there like, where do I start with this? And somebody will find something and be, at least get them started.
Well, and like talking about chronic illnesses, so I'm still breastfeeding. So I asked just kind of to the moderators, was like, hey, are these medications safe while breastfeeding? And God love Kristen. I love Kristen so much. She texted me and she's like, here's all the articles that I could find on these, and they should be safe while breastfeeding, but here's things to consider. And like, I just love her so much because she was so like Johnny on the spot. Like, here, I'm going to show you everything about lactation and these medications. So,
Yeah. So that, and it's a good place for support too. So if you do have a child with an IEP, or a child with a chronic illness, or a child with a whatever, or today you can't handle motherhood because you are just overwhelmed, it's a nice place for support where people aren't going to judge you. They're
mhm.
not going to be, oh, you're a terrible mom. You're not going to get any of that. You're going to get a little hug emoji and even if they can't help you with their problem, you'll get a mama, I feel you, and I'm here for you. And that can make the difference, because when it comes to anything you do in your life, and especially motherhood, which is the most important thing you can do in your life, I think attitude is everything. I know that everybody's had jobs where you just hated your job and you're like, you just want to quit your job and everything is bad about your job and all of that, right? And then you might maybe shut down for a little while. Maybe I'm not going to think about what was going on. And then a month later, all of a sudden you love your job again and you're like, yeah, this is great. Because your attitude changed, because maybe something bad happened. And so you went down that negative road. it's the same with motherhood. Like there are days where it is like, why did I choose to do this? What was I thinking? I'm not equipped to do this. These kids are just bad. I don't know what, like I had Satan's child or whatever goes through your head. And just changing that attitude makes you remember why you loved it so much. And so groups like that can help you change your attitude back. Like they could be empathetic, but then also like, yeah, but you know.
And also, I think we're going to do another episode kind of about some of that too. Hopefully, we can keep it from getting a little bit too serious because, you know, but I had watched a video today that just like was a man talking about postpartum depression and postpartum rage. So I think we're going to do an episode about that because it's one thing to have the thought, it's another thing to act on it. And having a support group helps a lot. And I think as moms, we need to be able to support each other so that we don't see, like the horrible tragic cases that you see in the news from somebody who didn't get the help. The help is there. So
Well,
let's
and
be
not
there for
only
each other.
that, we have to have a safe place to vent these terrible things too. Hi, Mook. Hi, baby.
But
So we just have to have a safe place to be able to say those terrible things and get it out of your head. Because like you were saying before, like when something festers in your head, it ends up blowing up bigger than it was. And that's why I say attitude is everything. So when you start getting that stinky attitude, you need to be redirected, just like you redirect your children. You need to be redirected and refocused and to get that attitude back to, because we all have thoughts that we are just not equipped to do this. Particularly when you get something thrown at you like a child who needs an IEP, a child with a chronic illness, or you don't have any of that, but you're a mom with a chronic illness and you're exhausted and nobody understands why.
yeah, and if you are a mom with a chronic illness, like your health matters too. It's like the oxygen masks on the plane. You got to put your own oxygen mask on first. So you need to be well so you can be there for your kids. And you're going to have crappy days. On those crappy days, try to find a support system, somebody who can help you take the load off.
Absolutely. And yeah, be weary of online groups, but there are a lot of good online groups out there. So if you go to one in the Vibe is Icky, maybe that's not the one for you. But when you go to one and, like I said, is everybody going to be able to solve your problems for you? No, probably not. Nobody knows your entire situation, but you at least have a safe place to get these things out where it's not going to be in the ether forever for other people to see. It's a safe place to be like, you know what, today I cannot do this. Yeah, it's a good experience if you're looking for that kind of support. And again, sometimes when you're thinking not nice things or whatever, it's a safe place to put it out there where like the people in your personal life aren't going to hear it unless you're me and Lauren, because she's my daughter and I'm her mom and we both belong to some of the same groups.
And there is an anonymous feature. So if it's something you want to get some support on, you want to get some perspective on, but you're embarrassed and you're worried somebody might know who you are, the moderators will still know who you are. We can see who sends the anonymous post, but not the entire group. So you
But
can
I'm
make
not a
anonymous
monitor.
posts.
I'm not a moderator, so if somebody posts something anonymous, I don't know who it is.
I only moderate for meals and marriage, so I can't see the rest of the groups.
Right,
So
and if somebody posts anonymously, she doesn't tell me who it is.
no, and yeah, we don't air people's dirty laundry.
No. And
But
quite frankly, my brain is still not that good, so I don't remember the dirty laundry anyway, so it's fine. No,
yeah,
just okay, so
but
that's fun. But do we have anything else? What is it? We went in the weeds. We
we went
weeded.
way in the weeds. I may have to cut some of that, but I think we're good.
Yeah. So are we wrapping it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Womp womp.